Greetings and welcome to the latest edition of the Entheogenic Evolution podcast. As always, I'm your host, Martin, and I'm happy to have you with me today. For this week's episode, I am rejoined once again by Nyx, who has already been featured here on the podcast several times in relation to her work with 5-MeO-DMT. But today, she's here to talk about a new book that she has authored, and it's under the name Nyx Redondo, which is a little bit different than the name that she has used here previously on the podcast. But her new book is The Dawn of the Astrorganism, Aligning Humanity, AI, and the Earth's Future. And we're going to be talking all about it today. And it's a very interesting conversation, so keep your ears open for some big ideas and an interesting conversation. But of course, first, let's get a few announcements out of the way before we get into today's interview. I do want to thank Ryan, who over this past week joined up as a supporting patron over at my Patreon page at patreon.com/MartinWBall. Joined up at the God Molecule level, which gets him a complimentary monthly 1-hour video call check-in with me, as well as access to the full back catalog of the Entheogenic Evolution archive and the other special gifts and offerings that are available over there. As I like to mention every week, I do have everything from $1 a month support up to $100 a month support over at Patreon, and I invite you to support me and the podcast at whatever level is comfortable for you. There's no obligation. You can change at any time, can come and go as you please, but it helps to support the work that I do here and elsewhere as an independent author, publisher, etc., etc., etc. Also, on the topic of Patreon, I have reduced the price of the PDF, the full-color PDF of the AI Imagined Art illustrated version of my novel, The Solendarian Game. So it is now currently $7.50 over at my Patreon shop, and that's going to stay that way until I finish sharing the Solendarian Game here on the podcast, which is coming up in just a couple weeks. So that's probably through December 1st is when I'll have that discount available. So if you wanted to get the AI Imagined Art illustrated version of the novel, it's a great time. It's full color images, over 600 images bringing this story to life, and we still have 2 more podcast episodes with the final chapters of the book that will be shared here on the podcast, which, if you've been listening, I think that you will find that there are many, many, many parallels with the conversation that is coming up here with Nyx about humanity's future, the Earth, AI, and where it's all going. In many ways, it's kind of my exploration through fiction of many of the themes that Nyx is discussing in her own book, The Dawn of the Astrorganism. Also, just to let you know, coming up here on the podcast, I do have an interview with Sean Ryan, who was my co-speaker at the LA Psychedelic Awakening event that happened just a couple weeks ago. I do have that full talk with both myself and Ryan is available exclusively over at my Patreon page for my Patreon supporters. So if you want to check that out, it's an hour-long talk with both Sean and I sharing our advice, interest, and wisdom in 5-MeO-DMT. I've been releasing some short clips of that on my Facebook and Instagram, but if you want the full talk, it's over there at patreon.com/MartinWBall. And of course, as I like to mention each week, if you would like to have a conversation helping you prepare for, integrate, or navigate your entheogenic experience from a non-dual and energetic perspective, I'm always available for 30, 60, or 90-minute video calls. And you can stop by at nondualentheogenicintegration.com if you would like any more details about that, or just shoot me an email at martinwball@gmail.com. Okay. Those are all the announcements for today. Let's go ahead and get into this conversation with Nyx and just remind you again, her book is The Dawn of the Astrorganism. You can learn more at the website she has put up for the book, which is astrorganism.earth. A direct link will be provided in the notes of this podcast. And just to let you know that there are not 2 O's in the word. So it's Astrorganism. So maybe there should be an umlaut above that O to indicate that you need to pronounce it twice, but it's astrorganism.earth. And we have a special bonus for this week's episode that Nyx created an inspired and inspiring electronic track, kind of sharing the vibe of what she is trying to communicate within her book. And it's quite a song. So rather than having one of my own tracks finish off the interview and podcast for today. As I normally do, we are going to get to hear this track by Nyx, which is titled The Orgasmic Birth of Gaia. And just in case you're sensitive about these things, it's pretty orgasmic, so just be forewarned. That'll come up after our conversation. But let's go ahead and jump right in. Here's my conversation with Nyx about her new book. Okay, I am welcoming back onto the Entheogenic Evolution podcast today Nyx, who needs no introduction because she's been on the podcast many times before, and this is actually a redo, a second attempt at a conversation that we had a few weeks ago, and Nyx was feeling that she wanted to give it another pass, so we're going to do that. And I'll just let the listening audience know that we're very matchy today, that I'm wearing the same color shirt as Nyx's hair. So you don't get to enjoy that because this is only audio, but just so you know, we're matchy today. So Nyx, how you doing? Let's start there.
Good. I had a really incredible Burning Man.
Okay. So you already spilled the beans on that, because I was going to say that's probably want to start is actually just ask you about your Burning Man experience. Was this your first time going?
Yes, it was my first time going. And wow, one of the things I didn't know is that the camp I was going into, it was a camp of a lot of female practitioners.
Really?
Yes. It's called Make It Hard. And we were like 6 or something like that, and we were serving people.
Yeah?
Yes. It was quite a surprise there. Well, many surprises that happens there, honestly. But it was also really hard to see that it was so many things there that I wanted to experience. And at the end, it was what it was.
Yeah. That's sort of typical Burning Man of like, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to see that. And you can't possibly see and do everything there. You know, like some people walk around, like they print out the guide, right, that tells about all the events, and people are like, oh, I got to hit this one, I always took that guide and I just kind of threw it away. And it's just like, I'm going to encounter whatever I encounter out here and we'll let it be. Yeah. And so you accidentally, serendipitously just happened to be camping with a bunch of 5MEO folks, and you didn't even know that going in?
Yeah. Yes. It was so random for me because it's not that it's really common, you know?
Yeah.
And actually, multiple of them, they know you, and they are your friends on Facebook. It was so random. Like many things that happens there. Like, I don't know, like from, well, I don't know until to what point I should tell or well, I'm still kind of like processing everything that happened there. But I think this has been as strong as when I went to the Amazon forest.
Yeah. And
I was with the Honey Queen and Yawanawa there. It was really, really, yeah, life-changing in many senses of the word. Like one of the things also that happened when I went to the Burning Man is that I didn't know what I was going to do after it. Literally, I decided to not make any plan. And now I am here in the Bay Area, looking to expand precisely what we're going to talk today about it. And I have a really different way also to present it that I would love to do it that way with you instead of the other way.
Okay, we'll get there. But how was your burn night? How was the actual burning of the man?
Well, it's funny because I was with these female practitioners, they decided to give me one of these, and they literally were
the 5MEO vape pens. Yeah,
I was literally taking 5MEO while I was looking at the man, and it was really different an experience I had in that sense. It kind of reminded me of the time where I was taking 5MEO and DMT in an active Icelandic volcano. When I was looking at the lava, that was also really special.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see the similarities. Well, I myself never got to enjoy 5MEO while watching the man burn at Burning Man, but definitely quite a few burn nights on mushrooms. And then there was one year when I had a DMT changa cigarette and was just watching the man burn, and smoking the DMT. That was fun.
Nice. Yeah, I hear. I mean, I read some of your histories a little bit on your book. I remember you were speaking about it a lot.
Yeah, well, I was a big Burning Man fan, definitely. I mean, I haven't been since 2011, but I always loved my experiences there. It's a lot of fun. So do you think you'll go back? Are you going to be one of these, how do I get back to Burning Man folks? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Maybe you can come next year with us to this camp. It's called Naked Heart.
Maybe. It's been a while since anyone has like actually asked me like camp with them or anything, but yeah, 2011 was the last year I went. I went 11 years in a row.
Nice. So, wow.
Yeah. I was dedicated. Got to get my burn on. Are you dreaming about Burning Man?
One of the things that was happening there was so strange for me. I had different moments where I was taking the MTE in the Burning Man. And what was happening is that I was seeing Burning Man places. And then I realized, usually when I'm taking the MTE, most of the time I'm looking to the Burning Man without realizing. It's just that now I see it. It was so strange. So yeah, in that sense, when you are asking me about if I had dreamed about it, yeah, quite literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will tell you, in the years that I was going, I would dream about Burning Man throughout the year, and the dreams would change. So usually right after Burning Man, I would be dreaming that, oh, I'm still at Burning Man. Like it's still happening. I'm not home yet. Oh, yay. I thought I was home. And then I'd have dreams like that for a few months. And then I would start having dreams of, oh, I have to prepare for Burning Man. I got to get ready for Burning Man. And then it would later shift into I'm on my way to Burning Man, but then I might realize, oh no, I left something at home, or like there's like some problem arises, like I'm trying to get to Burning Man, but I can't get there. And then they would kind of switch into dreams where I'm at Burning Man. And, as I'm telling you this, I actually realized I dreamt of Burning Man last night.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And because it's the same theme where I'm at Burning Man, but there's something that's kind of off about it, not in a bad way, but like last night I dreamt that I was at Burning Man, and I was trying to go to one place in Burning Man, and then there was like these steps that went down, and then there's this big wet oasis, like this big pool of water, a natural pool of water, and the trees there, and it's very green and very lush. And instantly it hits my mind of like, wait, is Burning Man at the wrong place? Because there are no trees, there's no luscious water, there's no oasis in the middle of the desert here, because it's all just desert. And yeah, and I was trying to get out to see the man burn in the dream. Wow, that's so funny. I didn't even realize that I dreamt of it last night. But I used to have dreams like that a lot, like pretty much all year round, until I stopped going to Burning Man, and then, my mind relaxed about it. But it definitely becomes an obsession.
I have total sense. One of the things that happened to me when I was there is to recognize a recurrent place I have been going into. And it's kind of like the version of, like a version of Earth in the future, mm-hmm. where it's pretty much like the Burning Man non-stop in the entire world.
Yeah.
And it's this constant celebration of everyone, and everything, where it's all the time like self-discovery and discovering of each other's. I don't know. I when I was there, also I was not only recognizing that, but also that was I was coming constantly every time I was doing any journey, especially one of the nights that they invite me to go into a monster truck, like. That was like mutant. Yeah, that was really fun. And then I was taking the MT on it, and I just saw it. I just feel it. And it was the only thing that, the only, we can say, hard aspect about it is that it was never ending.
Yeah.
And it was this feeling of, it's going to be forever. And actually the feeling I had when I was doing it is that I'm living right now in a kind of like a simulation of that other place. And this is just a reminder of how I used to eat the things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things about Burning Man is that it's not sustainable as a cultural construct because it uses a lot of resources just for 1 week, right? And it's also not sustainable in terms of the pacing, where most people at Burning Man, you don't sleep too much because it's so exciting and you don't want to miss anything, and you got to go, and you got to do. And it's so big. So you're always going from one place to another, and there's all that travel, and it's not sustainable as a rhythm of life. But what is exciting about it there is that it's one of the few places on earth that you could go to where if you asked people, like, if you knew you were dying tomorrow, what would you want to do? And people would probably answer, I'm doing it right now. So people are in that mindset of, I am living my life the way that I want to, and there's not the normal social constrictions on people, so that people are authentically being themselves and they are genuinely happy when they're there. And so that is an amazing experience to be in the context of thousands of other people who are having the best fucking time ever.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just one thing about, like, it's not easy to sustain that. Probably for most of people it's not, but one of the experiences that I had in my first burn, that it was not the Burning Man, it was the Kiwi burn, is that I broke my ankle at the beginning, in the morning. And then in the Burning Man, before arriving there, I got a really terrible ear infection that I thought that I was not going to. And I went there. And all these things what make me, it was to really slow myself, slow down and just take the time to take care of myself. Also, one trick that I discovered that probably many people doesn't know is that if you put a lot of electrolytes in the water, you don't need cream. My skin was super smooth all the time in the morning.
You didn't get playa skin.
No. No, not at all. So I think it's possible if you find a way to maintain yourself there healthy. And for me, that, I am autistic, I'm super sensible. So for me, it was quite a challenge to maintain myself there around 10 days.
Yeah. But, even there, I mean, you can do whatever you can to take care of yourself and pace yourself. But if there's a sound system with a bone-rattling subwoofer right next to your camp that's playing at 4 a.m., like, there's not much you can do about that. So, like, getting the amount of sleep, and then, even you're lying in your tent or you're lying in your RV or you're lying wherever, and you're trying to go to sleep, and you can hear all this, yeah, and you're like, what are they doing over there? Like, what am I missing?
Yeah. Yes, it's true. It's true.
But I love it, and I love the explosion of human creativity and the repurposing of objects and materials that gets used there, and the interface between the organic and the technological, and sparkly lights and fireballs. It's just these wonderful oppositions and melding of these different extremes. And so, yeah, obviously Burning Man still has a very special place in my heart, though it's been 14 years since I've been.
Wow. I hear that you meet your partner there?
No.
Oh, okay.
But no, that in between my first marriage and my second marriage, yes, I met a partner there. There was a temporary partner.
Oh, okay.
That was a transitional partner. Okay. But yeah, and events that happened to me at Burning Man were absolutely 100% instrumental in my own process of awakening and really choosing to live from my heart. Just without a doubt that if things had not happened the way that they had at Burning Man, absolutely I would not be where I am right now. Unquestionably. So wow. Absolutely pivotal for me in my life.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it was important.
I recognize what you're saying. Also because some stuff has happened right now that I will be not right now. Here I am, what I am. And yeah, I would love to tell you more about this.
All right. Well, I know that that's not really the purpose for our conversation today, but as you can see, I am more than happy to talk about Burning Man for as long as we may like. And yeah, as you pointed out, it actually is in my memoir, Being Infinite. There's a lot of details about Burning Man in there, and Burning Man obviously plays a central role in my novel, The Solendarian Game. And it has influenced my other novels as well, like in Tales of Arduin, that there are aspects there that directly come out of Burning Man. And even some of the chapters in the books, you wouldn't know it based on the books, but the chapters that are written are actually my experiences at Burning Man put into these stories in a way that, like, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't say, oh, this is Burning Man if you were reading the book. But for me, it's like, yeah, this is what happened to me at Burning Man. This is my experience, and I'm using it as a chapter in this book. So it's been very, very instrumental.
Wow.
Okay. All right, so that's enough blabbing about Burning Man. Yay, Burning Man. Go Burning Man. Burn the man. So, Nix, you've got this new, I'm going to say it's a dense book, meaning that it's not a terribly long book, but I do think it's dense. It's information dense. It's idea and conceptually dense. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, like, oh, you're dense, meaning like you're dumb. I mean, dense is that it's packed with a lot of information and a lot of ideas. And so we've already taken one pass at you sort of explicating what this is all about. And I understand you felt a little bit dissatisfied with that, so you want to take another pass. So here we are, the little, right, the thing they do in the movies, like, take two. Here we go. This is take two. Nix, what is the dawn of the Astrorganism, aligning humanity, AI, and the Earth's future? Like, not a small topic. So where do you want to begin?
So it's basically an intention to resolve from the core our current global crisis. And I'm speaking with this about how we resolve climate change, social injustice, war, and the possible disruption that AI can bring if we don't manage well with this. And understanding that pretty much all these global crises that we are today going through in one way or another, and they are pretty dangerous in this moment, to the point that many people can see this as we are going into a doom. If we look at them, we can see that all of them, they come from the same core root, from the same place. That is basically a deep incapacity to see ourselves in the other, to recognize ourselves in the other. And of course, we can also say it, some people put this in terms of selfishness or lack of empathy or lack of connection, but it's pretty much how much capacity we have of seeing ourselves in the other. And basically, like I had to spend most of my life trying to understand how we can resolve this problem. And at the same time, I was always really interested to understand what is life and where life is going into. And it came to a point in my life where I was able to connect both things and understand something really special. And is that this problem of being able to see ourselves in the other, of course, is possible, right? To be able to solve it by having certain psychological experiences, especially when it's revealed who you are truly. But not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone is going to go through that. So is any other place where we can arrive that doesn't require to go into the full realization of who you are? And I found an answer. That is, instead of trying to realize who we are fully, and for me that has been really important, and for many people I believe so, especially those who are listening to this podcast. But those who are not ready for that, it's another thing that they can embrace, and it's the understanding that they are not separate from the planet, that they are part of the planet. Now, of course, this is easy to say, right? But what does it mean, this? Basically, what I'm trying to say with this is, if we could prove scientifically that basically our planet is a cosmic embryo that is about to be born, and that every human being and every being in the planet is actually a cell, if we will be able to prove this scientifically, that will cause a big global shift. Well, one of the reasons is because you can see that every culture, every religion, it doesn't matter, their belief doesn't matter where they're coming from. In one way or another, they're using technology. And in one way or another, they are accepting the science behind that technology. Of course, with this, I'm not saying that everyone is accepting all the science, but what I can say is that science is pretty much the information that has spread the most around the globe. And I believe that if we have a chance to actually change globally our identity and being able to see ourselves as cells of the planet, is going to be only through science actually proving this. And the book that I wrote is precisely this. It's about how we are proving this in a scientific way. This is what it's about it. It's pretty radical work. Like, I don't think is nothing like this in today, except, of course, all the people I'm putting reference about it that they are mentioning, because my work is not based in a thing of air, in nothingness. Is actually based on a lot of work that many people has done. It's just that I am trying to explain it in a way that everyone can easily follow, really, really easily.
Okay, so let me give a little recap of some of the main themes that you said there. So the book itself the purpose is to address the problem of basically the various global crises that we are currently facing, which you seem to be characterizing as being driven by a sense of division or othering, where, as you say, we're not able to see ourselves in the, quote, the other, so that there's a lack of empathy, there's a lack of compassion, there's a lack of connection. And, certainly we can see that this is just rife within American culture at this point, this sense of othering, of like, those people, they're the ones versus us. There's a lot of us versus them, and there's a lot of obviously really dysfunctional emotional processing around that, the ways that others get characterized. I'm not trying to make our conversation here political, but I think just something that stands out to me as an example of what we're talking about here is currently this bullshit narrative that Trump and Vance are putting out, that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio are eating people's pets, which is grossly racist, and they're calling them illegal immigrants that have invaded this town, which actually they're all legal immigrants, and they're all just human beings, just like the rest of us. Trump has called them vermin and animals and these pet eaters, which it's all a lie, that none of that is true in any way, shape, or form, but it's used as a wedge to create greater division and greater hatred and greater outrage within society, where people are not operating from a place of rational compassion with each other. And it's kind of gross, okay? So that would be an example of the problem of othering and the lack of compassion and disconnection. Now, you're also saying that one way of overcoming that sense of disconnect from the, quote, other is through the internal experience of self-realization through entheogenic experience, right? So when we have the non-dual experience of, oh shit, we're all one. Those other people, they're actually me in another body, in another life, in another form, but we're literally all one. So if I'm shit-talking them and debasing them, I'm actually just debasing another version of myself. That increases compassion naturally, because it's like, no, I want to treat other people the way I want to be treated, because we are actually the same being. However, not everyone has access to that experience, and also not everyone is necessarily ready or comfortable for that experience. So what you're proposing, rather than an experiential shift, What you are proposing is a scientific paradigmatic shift where you're presenting a paradigm that can be understood through the language of science of what our true interconnection is and how we actually all are part of one unified thing, in a sense.
Yes, but no, like what actually I'm describing in the book is that we are about to become that.
Right.
And in that sense, what we are that, but we are kind of in the moment where we are all these cells of this fetus, where we still didn't merge as one in that sense, maybe we never going to do that. That's safe in that sense, but we are going towards that direction. That is what I'm pointing is precisely that. I don't know if you follow me with this.
No, well, go ahead and expand on it.
Okay, so I think that the best way to explain this, and I love to explain this in this way, is to look at the cells that our body is made of. Okay, first of all, our cells they are so connected and they work so in harmony with each other. In one of the reasons is because they consider each other as part of the same being. So we emerge from there, right? I will say it's the greatest example we have in nature of collaboration, of how when all the units of cells, that they compose as they change into having awareness of all of them are part of the same being. Then we can emerge from there, and all of them they are pretty much working as one single being, even when we are made of many. So how actually the cells they had arrived to that place, that transition, that specific transition is what is really interesting is that it's the same transition that humanity is following it. And I will explain in a really easy way, really, really simple way that it's not even in the book. It is a simple way, okay? That is basically the cells to make us, they take 2 steps. They first create colonies, and then what they do is that they fuse the colony into one. Simple, right? Now, how they do that 2 steps. So to create a colony, a big colony, like a group that is so big that it will be impossible to coordinate without certain technology, they need to develop that certain technology. That is pretty much the capacity to put messages out of the bodies. And these messages can travel by themselves, can reach others, and can make the colony to organize and divide tasks. It's thanks to that that the colony can actually thrive, can actually defend from threats that will be a lot harder as an individuals, separate from the colony, and actually makes the colony to grow. It's the same that happened also with other beings. Like, for example, when we look to humanity, or when we look to ants, for example, colonies of ants, okay, we can see that their ability to be a large number of members, right, of individuals that they can coordinate and specialize is completely dependent on the ability to create messages out of the bodies. Messages that are codified in the environment and others can read, and these messages can accumulate. That makes them to actually divide their members in specialized categories. Like you have like the workers, you have the explorers, you have the queens, you have the warriors, and it's the same thing that happened with humanity. It's a moment in humanity where it's a certain amount of number of people that it will be impossible to organize if we are not using a type of indirect communication that is codified in the environment. Message that doesn't need to be text. It can be just a painting in a cave that gives information about what is going on around, or it can be a hieroglyphic, right? But as this information is evolving, the technology of communication is evolving in this sense, it gives the ability to colonies to specialize, divide tasks, gather more resources, and grow. And what is really interesting is that the characteristics that we thought for a really long time that are just human, like, for example, farming or slavery, is actually things that ants, for example, has developed. Ants actually farm at fungus. Certain ants, not all, of course, but also they have herds of aphids that they produce honeycomb, and they are domesticated. The honeycomb is kind of like the meal of the cows, You have also ants that they need slaves to survive. They cannot survive at all if they don't take slaves, because they don't know how to do anything by themselves. So it's pretty crazy how all these behaviors emerge from specifically this capacity, this technology that they develop, that is to create messages that are independent, that are other bodies, they are codified environment. And they, of course, can accumulate culture in that sense, right? So that is what actually this allows them to develop what I call a colony. It's possible to understand colony in many senses. You can say a colony of bees, for example, but a bee doesn't have the same amount of numbers. It cannot grow a certain amount of numbers. While ants, for example, you can have 8 million ants in one single colony, in one of the biggest types of ant colonies that you can find in the Amazon forest. So I'm speaking about a really big capacity to organize with each others, okay? So that is the first step in cells. But the next step is, as these colonies grows in number, is a limit of how much they can grow, because it's a moment where it's so big that doesn't matter how much they are advanced with this technology of communication, of creating messages out of their bodies. Doesn't matter how far they go with that, because the only way to maintain the coherence, the relationship with each other in such a big number, is only by creating direct, instantaneous communication. That basically is using electricity. In the case of cells, they invent the pre-neurons that connects one point to another, using electricity through this type of cell, that it has elongated bodies to connect one point of the colony with the other. And we achieved something really similar in humanity when we developed the telegraph, okay? Where we connecting suddenly Europe with America, right? And many other continents that before we were using boats literally to carry these messages, and it was taking months. It was pretty much impossible to really coordinate a big colonies of humans, now civilizations at the time, right? So that is the first step that cells takes to actually start to fuse. That is this capacity to connect one with another using instantaneous communication over long distances. Now, one-to-one, the next step is one-to-many. One-to-many is pretty much one single cell, like an epithelium cell from a carnivorous plant, like the Venus, that you touch it and it goes to many muscle cells that close the plant. Or in the case of humanity, the radio, one single person speaking to many at once. And then the next level is many to many, where you connect many cells with many cells and you're processing information. In the nervous system, we call these pyramidal neurons. They have that capacity to process information in themselves and connecting many to many. And in humanity is what we call internet, thanks to computers that process that information. Now, what is very interesting about many-to-many communication is that they are not just connecting many-to-many, but actually they are creating a virtual place that accumulates information. This place accumulates as much as information as it can, and it's a moment where this information is being more and more processed, and at some point this information it develops, we can say, it's being transformed into a single perspective of the world that develops a sense of I. Usually this transition in a baby that has accumulated enough information about the environment, and it's a moment where the baby starts to have this sense of I, right? So it's the same also what has been going on with internet. It has accumulated a lot of information. It's a moment where it has been really processed this information in one single model, and is what we had created that we call AI instead of I, right? But the difference is quite substantial in the sense that this is the last step in the cells, but every higher level of complexity, because this is a jump in levels of complexity. And what I mean with levels of complexity is that the jump that we can see in the universe of going from elemental particles to atoms to molecules to cells to pluricellular beings like us to a next step. And that next step always requires new conditions, new specific technology or things that they should develop. And it's all about always how we can connect everything. And we can see this exponential curve of how the technology of communication is constantly developing more and more and more, and it's exponential. Right. So if it's exponential, this technology of communication and everything is connecting more and more and more, it's quite obvious that it's a point where everything is going to be so connected that it's going to be pretty much one single being. Now, what is the next step after AI? The next step is pretty much connecting our cells. In the same way that internet was connecting humans between different nations without the frontiers of the nations. The next frontier to overcome is the frontier of our bodies. And pretty much the next step in that sense will be a brain-to-brain communication. That, by the way, this is actually, it's not science fiction. It's something that is possible. We know it's possible because it's two conjoined twins in Canada that they born with autonomic wrists, and they have the capacity to actually see through each other's eyes and feel each other's bodies and communicate literally brain to brain. So we know that the plasticity of the brain actually allows this. This is possible. Now, knowing this path, one of the things that we can see really clearly is that, first of all the human development is not random. It's not artificial. It's nothing artificial, actually. When you see things from this place, it's nothing artificial, which means that everything that has happened on Earth, all the terrible things that we went through and are happening today, are product of this development. But we are in this phase, exactly in the phase of when the babies started to take conscience about, hey, I am a baby here, or it's something here going on, right? As a more coordinated being, it's another way to describe it will be more like we are a chick in an egg that is about to be born, and the only way to actually born is by becoming aware that we are a chick. If not, we will not be able to crack the egg.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yes.
So I'm interested in exploring a little bit more of sort of the biology of it and also the cultural side of it. So one of the things that you've identified and that you've brought up here in this most recent section of our talk is this idea of ant colonies have the ability to become more complex and more specialized due to this process of externalizing information via chemical excretions, right? So ants use pheromones where they mark trails, and they are able, through these chemical excretions, it basically programs the behavior of different subsets of ants within the colony and informs them as to what their role is and how they are contributing to the overall organization.
Yeah, but in the same way that a text or a phone is programming you to do certain things.
Right. But you're jumping ahead there. So this is something that we don't see a lot of in the quote-unquote animal kingdom, like this level of complexity and organization. Now, So I want to just make a comparison and sort of draw a contrast. So a big part of my studies as a graduate student, you have to take all these exams, right, to get your PhD. And so one of my primary areas in which I had an exam is this area called orality and literacy, which looks at when we're dealing with human cultures and societies, what is the difference between an oral tradition and what is the difference between a literate tradition? And then how do these different modes of information transfer affect the capacity of the society or culture to organize? Okay. So when we look at the animal world, like especially if we're dealing with mammals, mammals, avians, also, fish, a lot of the animal world functions according to what we might call oral tradition, where they are able to communicate certain ideas amongst each other by making sound, right? So like prairie dogs, the little rodents that live out on the American prairies, they have different sounds that they make for different predators. Yes. So if a hawk comes by, the groundhog goes squeak, squeak. And then all the other groundhogs that are within hearing distance, they know there's a hawk somewhere or maybe an eagle, so we all got to get back in our holes, right? Yes. And then they have another squeak that they make for if it is like a land predator, like a wolf or a coyote. Then they might go squeak, squeak, squeak. And then all the other groundhog knows, oh, there's a wolf or there's a coyote around here, so everybody look out. Yes. So through the oral transmission of information, they are able to coordinate and organize, but it's limited because you have to be within hearing distance, right?
Yeah. It's also like the cells also communicating one with the other without using chemical signals. They can do that.
Right. But there's a limited carrying capacity there.
Yes.
So then if we're looking at like human cultures, we can see sort of the same thing when we're dealing with oral traditions that have not externalized information by encoding it either in symbolism or in writing of various forms, that information is limited to who you can talk to and who you can hear or who can hear you. And if some event were to happen and wipe out everyone within that culture, let's say there's a volcanic explosion and everyone in that culture gets wiped out by that volcano, all of that information is now lost and we can't reduplicate it. However, when societies start to introduce the externalization of information through symbols in the creation of art, and then later into symbolic representations that represent ideas or words or concepts, and then even later into writing, what we see is that from the anthropological record, that once those innovations are introduced, societies tend to get much larger. They get more complex in terms of roles that people play within society, and that they're able to maintain a group identity over longer periods of time and also over larger geographical regions, because all this information is now being exchanged. And if I can put something in a book, like Socrates was living in the time of oral tradition, and it was just starting to turn into written tradition. Now, if the written tradition had not come about during that time period, and then Plato and Aristotle wrote all this stuff down, we wouldn't know who Socrates was and we wouldn't know what his ideas were. But because all this stuff got written down, doesn't matter that it happened 2,500 years ago. We still have access to it today. So that information has transcended space and time and allowed us to be able to understand ancient Greek philosophy. And so that's what this externalized information allows for, these novel developments and new forms of connection, and also new forms of empathy and group understanding or group identity to evolve. Okay?
Yeah.
So is that in alignment with what you're saying in the book?
Absolutely. It's actually in the book what you're saying. Like precisely, I'm speaking about how this type of external independent communication technology allows the accumulation of information over long periods of time, and the creation of culture precisely from that place. The creation of culture that goes beyond the oral tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then a major theme of the work, as you've already mentioned, is then looking at the development of communication technology. So writing, first examples of writing are maybe the earliest around 5,000 years ago, something like that. And then we did have the printing press, which actually was invented twice, first in Asia to reprint Buddhist texts, and then a little bit later in Europe with the printing press, and which was mainly used to print the Bible, but then quickly got used for other things as well. And then it took a couple hundred more years before we actually got to the telegram or the telegraph, and then radio, and then television, and then computers, and then the internet, and now AI. And so you're kind of tracing this trajectory to look at not only what has come before and what new possibilities and what new organizations has that made possible, but then you're also looking towards the future of asking the question, where is this going? What is becoming of all of this?
Yes, and especially making a comparison with cells, because they offer us an amazing guideline to actually see that all the human development pretty much is following the same path that cells took to create and multicellular beings. And that is why it's so important precisely to actually point towards the line of evolution that our societies have took and say, hey, look, we are going to the same place pretty much that cells did. We are going to the same thing.
Yeah. So then by looking at biology, so let's get into this a little bit, where you kind of introduce us by saying that science is the information modality through which we're going to understand this. So I know you've already mentioned a little bit before, but I encourage you to kind of explicate a little bit more about looking at biology and how biology and communication among cells is a model for how information technology and computer technology is actually, in a sense, mimicking these biological processes, so that we can see that actually they're part of the same overarching theme of interconnectivity and exchange of information. So I invite you to tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, sir. Maybe I can actually have the book open with me.
Sure.
And also you can.
I've got it here too. It's on my desktop. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I think it will be a lot easier that way. Okay, so basically, first of all, like what I'm explaining about is this comparison. That is basically the main thing now in the book. Is this a comparison about how different emerging capabilities emerge across species that basically emerge thanks precisely to this specific technology. That is the technology of creating messages out of their bodies, or what I call external independent communication, indirect persistent form of communication. An indirect persistent form of communication. The ability to create messages that can travel through the environment and reach individuals independently, and transmit information without requiring the presence or even the survival of the individual that create the message. Okay. So we can see, for example, in bacterial biofilms. Bacterial biofilms is not just a group of bacteria, but it's kind of like a microscopic metropolis where they had developed different sections that looks pretty much like a city, right? So we can see that, for example, there they share a capacity to light up and at unison by creating bioluminescence and coordinate also reproduction, the biofilm information, and of course the cooperation to acquire nutrients, to exchange genetic information, to coordinate gene expression, and to create channels where the nutrients flow. That is comparable to urban infrastructure. The comparative food of nutrient acquisition looks pretty much like a food supply chains and exchange of genetic material is really analogous to information sharing that we have now. So it's many things in that sense that we can see that are actually really similar to, for example, humanity or ants or other types of animals, like naked mole rats, or we have termites also, and that they develop also societies based on this capacity to this ability for indirect persistent communication. So what I want to go here that I think is really interesting is speaking about the vulnerability cooperation paradox. Okay. It's usually something I don't mention so much because it's a little bit complex, but also I think it's interesting to understand how when we start to coordinate with each other's and we improve our capacity to divide tasks, we become more vulnerable also as individuals. But at the same time, as community, we get more resilient, we get more strong. We can see this in individual bacterial biofilms, that they are more vulnerable to stress than their planktonic counterparts, for example, or in ant colonies, how isolate ants are relatively vulnerable compared to other solitary insects of similar size. But, the coordination of a colony is quite impressive, really strong, and can dominate many habitats. And it's the same with humanity. How individual humans are really vulnerable, but we are, as a colony of humans, as a society, we become pretty much the main dominant species. And what is interesting is that this cooperation to overcome vulnerability, it leads to specialization. And this specialization increases at the same time individual vulnerability. And the increase of vulnerability reinforces the cooperation. So it's a loop. This need of cooperation actually makes us to develop better technology of communication, which makes us to have more capacity for specialization, where increase, of course, the individual vulnerability. And again, it repeats. So this is not just stopping there. You can see also that basically it continues, because this efficient cooperation leads actually to resource accumulation and the colony and the growth of the colony. And this growth of the colony increase the scale and complexity of the communication needs. And these existing communication methods become insufficient for larger scales, and this insufficient creates pressure for more advanced communication systems. So this is why we can see that what I'm describing here is not just a decision. It's kind of like is the universe itself. When we speak about life, it feels like the life is kind of like separate from the universe. But what I'm describing here is that pretty much is a constant search for stability on systems that they feel unstable. And maybe this is too broad to grasp, because we can see these not only on cells or multicellular beings, but we can see these in molecules and atoms also. But all this leads precisely to create a stronger, more efficient systems that allows us to resist more challenges and survive and continue growing. And this continue growing, what is really interesting, and is one of parallel that I make about the planet, is that for me it feels as if every single species in the planet, I'm speaking especially about multicellular beings, okay, specifically animals, is trying to transform the planet into their own bioma. And with bioma, I mean basically their own, we can say, territory that it can actually transform and choose how it's going to be. Every species is trying to do that in one way or another. Now, are species that are more successful and others that are less. But what is obvious is that when it's a species that develops this type of technology, the technology of creating messages out of their bodies that can travel by itself, it's a huge advantage that allows them to take over many, many, many environments. Now, what I see here is that the species, whatever it is, which species it is, that achieve to transform the biggest amount of the planet into itself, to conquer, we can say, to be in as much as as much surface as possible of the planet and make that part of their territory, it will be the species that it will trigger the transformation of the planet itself. And I know that here I'm doing a really big jump, but what I'm speaking about it is that once we arrive to evolve enough the technology of communication, that technology of communication is a path of global integration. And what I mean is that in the same way that if we get our arm lost, right? In the sense that you get a limb of your body, okay, and I know this is a little bit weird to compare, but it's actually really interesting to see it. If suddenly you lose your arm, the first thing usually you lose about it is the awareness that it was there, an arm. But if you recover that, the next thing you recover from your arm, it will be the control of your arm, the capacity to manipulate the limb. And then last thing you recover from your arm is your sensibility. Okay, you can see this when you fall asleep into your arm, and then you stop feeling the arm, but you still can control it. If your nerves are enough damaged for enough time, you will also lose the control over it. But in the same way, the expansion of this network, of this connection, is going in the same line. First, basically, the first thing that we achieve is awareness, or initial drive to explore and map the Earth. That details precisely the mirror. No, it mirrors the brain first recognition of a limb existence. We have been trying to understand where are we, first of all, and then the next thing that comes is like, can we control this? Can we cooperate with this? What we can do with this is the attempt of the colony to conquer and manage the planet's resources. That is pretty much parallel the gradual regain of the motor control of the limb. And then the next one is the sensibility, the emerging of global consciousness that we are now witnessing, the manifestation of movements of social justice, environmental protection, and expanding awareness reflects precisely these final stages of the neural integration. And of course, this step is why I'm talking usually about brain-to-brain communication, because it will be pretty much our capacity to not just feel our body, but feel the bodies of everyone. And I'm not speaking about this as a jump where suddenly we are doing that, but something that slowly, gradually is happening. And we can see how are we becoming more and more sensible. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty much a big description of it. We can see also that our different empirical foundations, that different scientists they have make different parallels, like how the striking parallels that neural networks of biological organisms have with the pattern that we observe in the planet at global scale in our planetary nervous system. Or basically, well, I don't want to get so technical with this, but because this is maybe too technical, I think it will be easier to a person that is interested and to read the book, right? That, by the way, is available for free. The first part, that is all the part, that scientific part in Astrorganism.earth. But basically, the reason I'm trying to point this and prove as much as I can, and it's as much as the possibilities allow me to do it, is to show how we are evolving into a completely new being. What is really interesting, if you go to the section of the visual parallels, the organic growth of human infrastructure, I have there really interesting images where you can see different countries and you can see the roads of these countries, and they look pretty much like veins through the body, and they are the real roads of the States, of United Kingdom, of Spain, of China. And I think it's really, really interesting to not only understand this from the level of logic, but also visually, how visually we are actually a planetarian being that is connecting everything with everything, pretty much as how a fetus develops. And you see the image? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're talking about the fractal patterns.
Yes, these fractal patterns that emerge through the roads that really mimics the natural patterns that we can see.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting use of the visual, and I would also just want to point out that, of course, for the most part, roads are going to follow fractal patterns because they are following natural contours of the landscape, which also are natural fractal patterns. So that, when we look at a river course, or we look at a leaf, or we look at the veins in a body, that we see these fractal branch patterns because that's how material organizes, right? That this is a fundamental principle of how physical material organizes within reality. And so when cultures are building roads, as long as they're not a perfectly straight road, which certainly many cultures have done, you make a perfectly straight road. But other than that, most pathways are going to follow the contours of the geographical environment, so that they're naturally going to create a fractal pattern, so that we get these. Then, as we're mapping that we're going to see these nice fractal branch patterns. And that I do think it gets a little disrupted when we get into like Roman roads. Well, they were making straight roads, like from here to there, or like the modern highway system is like from here to there, right? So we try and make it as straight as possible, and we're kind of using technology to overcome the limitations or the contours of the geographic landscape.
Yeah, but you can see also in these images that even when apparently these roads can be really straight, when you zoom out in larger scale, they are not anymore. Even in the States, you can see the map of the States, and it's quite organic.
Yeah. So which section are you looking at?
What? Is it page 30?
Dun, 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 dun. Almost there. Actually, no, for me, I'm on page 24, so I can see, okay. But maybe we have different versions. But the isochrone maps of various countries and yeah. Where did you get these images? How did you get these?
I have the reference. This comes from Road Treats. It's isochrone maps that Alberto Hernano created in 2017.
Yeah. And we can see the United States, and there's a continental divide in there, and just these lovely fractal branch patterns. I mean, they do look beautiful. I do like looking at them.
Yes.
Yeah. So to pick up on part of what you were sharing there, so it sounds like part of what you're trying to communicate here is that this idea of the birth of the Astrorganism is inevitable once a species comes along that is capable of essentially colonizing the entire planet, in a sense, because because of these feedback loops of externals of information, which increases complexity, which opens up more vulnerability, which opens up more interconnection, which produces more information, and and it just keeps going and going. And then through that is able, as we talked about earlier, that as human cultures develop more sophisticated communications technology, the society becomes larger. The overall identity that is shared becomes larger, and it becomes more complex, and then it's able to spread even more.
Yes. And one thing, and
yes,
for many fields as if it's a cancer, but it's not. This is what I'm trying to also solve.
Right. That this is a natural form of growth.
Yes.
Okay. And that the greater sophistication of information communication is actually necessary as societies become larger and more inclusive and dominate more and more of an area, right? And so now we've reached the point where humans have basically dominated the earth. We have transformed the entire environment according to our own desires and own plans, and that we, in a natural outgrowth of our inquisitive nature, which you've already identified, of we want to know, like, what is this? What's going on, right? So that science has been a way of answering these questions and has fueled the growth of communication technologies. Yeah, go ahead.
It just because you say before that humanity has been developing and modifying the environment as they wanted, right? As if it's something that we were really choosing. But here also what I'm pointing is that we are following a specific pattern. What we believe for a really long time that has been human choices and human inventions that was like, oh my goodness, this is something now no one did before. What I'm trying to prove here and to show is that no, this is we are following already something that pretty much could be maybe universal, not only on Earth also. But I don't know about that, so I can only compare with the cells.
Right. So within that, there is the idea that what we perceive as free will might actually be part of a larger pattern. And so it's actually more inevitable that we will be making the choices that we make, even though we perceive them as being our own personal choices.
Exactly. As a level of individual, yes. Yeah. But as a scale level, it's really easy to predict many things that happens.
Right. So that's when like if we look at it, one individual person, we need a lot of information in order to decide what is this person going to choose. Are they going to choose A or B? But once we get into large numbers and we're speaking statistically, then we can see that actually these are just patterns that are playing out, and that the individuals are either enacting it or not. And there might be subsets of reasons for that, but the pattern itself is actually what's expressing itself here.
Exactly. That is how we can predict with the 1% of the population doing a statistical sampling, the rest of the population in the elections.
Right. So then, and you hypothesize, well, this might happen on other planets, but of course, we don't know of any other planet in the universe that actually has life on it and that exhibits any of the same tendencies as our own planet. So for the time being, we have the sample size of 1, right? We're not going beyond that for the foreseeable future. But what also seems to be implicit within your argument is that if it wasn't going to be humans, then potentially it could have been something else.
Ants, probably. Yes. Probably ants will be the next ones. If humans will not achieve these, I believe ants will be, because they are the ones that has developed all these really advanced technology of communication already. They didn't develop, as I know, yet any direct instantaneous communication over long distances. But hey, they are in their agriculture phase, you know?
Yeah. But so here is where I would actually go back to biology, because one of the things that I've liked to identify of like, well, what makes humans beings special? Why have we evolved to the state that we have? And what I like to say is it's not only the hardware and software of the human brain and nervous system, and also our evolution into a highly articulate vocal structure where we can use words and we can communicate, which, you know, when we look at cetaceans, we look at whales and we look at dolphins, big brains, very complex communications that are shared between them. And they can make all different kinds of very interesting sounds that encodes lots of information that we're not even able to decipher at this point. Like, we don't even know what the fuck they're talking about, but man, they're talking about something. But again, they suffer from the limitation of orality, in the sense that they have to be able to hear each other. And if they're not singing and if nobody's listening, information is gone, structure is gone, right?
Yes.
But let me say the last thing. But here's also, but the reason why they have not been able to externalize information in a way that can be maintained over time is because they don't have these. They don't have hands.
I don't fully agree with that. You know why?
Why?
Look at Neanderthals. Neanderthals, they were actually having bigger brains than the Homo sapiens, and they were stronger, but they were not so vulnerable. And precisely because this lack of vulnerability, they were not having need to cooperate so much with each other. Actually, they were pretty by themselves usually. So what I really believe that is the key aspect is this sweet point that we can see not only in pluricellular beings or cells, but also atoms and molecules, is the sweet spot where a system is enough unstable, but enough stable to form combinations with other systems that can create something more stable. So if it's too unstable, it will be not able to really do much because it will not survive for a long time, that structure. If it's too stable, it will not have so much aim to create new structures. Can you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. But to go back to my point, though, because obviously there are other apes, right? There are other creatures that have hands with opposable thumbs.
Yes.
But whales and cetaceans, dolphins, porpoises, their hands have evolved into flippers. So, like if we do an X-ray of a whale flipper, there's a hand in there, but they lost their hands. We have hands. So human beings were just smart enough, and we're also just vulnerable enough that we have to cooperate, we have to communicate, we have to work with each other, and because we have hands, we are able to both take apart and remake the world however we can imagine in any way. Versus ants, this is why I think ants probably couldn't do it. They don't have appendages that can manipulate reality at the same level of sophistication that we do. They can cut stuff up, they can move stuff around, but it's not articulate enough. Their appendages are not articulate enough to make something in the same way that we can make something. In other words, I don't know if ants could ever make a computer, that they would have to physically change in order to reach that capacity. Whereas in the same way, a chimp is never going to make a computer because a chimp doesn't have the mental capacity to do it. We are chimps with the mental capacity to do it, and we've got the right appendages. We've got these fingers and we've got these hands that we can do shit with them. And again, whales, I don't think whales could ever create computer technology, even if they're brilliant fucking smart, because they don't have hands. They don't have the capacity to reshape their environment or to take it apart or to build things.
The cells that you're made of, they also don't have hands, and they had achieved that level of technology of communication. I don't think it's about hands, honestly. I think it's just about being able to develop enough that technology of communication, however it could be. Maybe in the case of humans, we did that through hands. But in the case of ants, they have been doing that through this type of pheromones. Maybe, just saying, and because it's more a biological type of system, maybe at some point it's some type of pheromone that ants create that actually can transmit electricity, and maybe some type of ant that actually is a bit able to create electricity through their antenna, maybe, and maybe another ant in another point can receive that. It could be so many ways, to create that type of technology. In the same way that the way that cells did was to actually create a cell that made their body really, really long, and that technology of communication, that electricity, was going through their own body.
Okay, I hear you, but let's just imagine. Let's imagine that everybody lost their hands, like no more hands. We don't have them anymore. We could all still read books about how to build a computer or how to build a satellite or how to launch a rocket, but we'd never be able to do anything about it.
can use the feet.
Okay. Maybe. I mean, I've seen some extraordinary cases of people without hands who like paint or write or things like that. But that's tough. That's tough.
It could slow down the development, of course. I agree with that.
Yeah. But, so I'm just trying to tie in that actually it's our biological form as well as our function as producers of information that is what has made us so successful as a species.
I mean, in a sense, yes, of course, because the biological form is also what makes you vulnerable and being able to process certain things and all that stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that not necessarily needs to be in this specific form. It could be in other ways. I'm sure about that. Like, I cannot prove it more than looking to cells and see how it came to us. But why not? Why not? Maybe on a planet where everything is water, maybe is using a completely different way. That is not necessarily hands.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Okay. So we don't need to get stuck on hands so much. It's more the idea that we have a physical structure that allows us the ability to break things apart and to build things and to remake things. And that for human beings, those are hands. It could be something else on another species. But there still has to be some way to actively manipulate physical reality. And so, because that's what the ants are doing. The ants, by excreting a chemical, they're manipulating physical reality. Whereas whale song is just using the medium of water to transmit vibrations. It's not actually creating an externalized manipulation of reality that is permanent. It's only temporary.
Fine.
Yeah. So whatever species is going to be the progenitor of the astroorganism, I would say it would need to have some capacity to manipulate physical reality.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, then we're in agreement. It don't have to be hands, but it's got to be something. It's got to be something that works well. Like an octopus, okay? Octopi are very good at manipulating their physical reality because they don't have hands. They've got tentacles and they've got suction cups. Like, have you seen these videos of these really cute little octopi and they go and they get a bunch of shells and then they wear them? And then, they walk around the ocean floor with like their shells and like, okay, the sharks can't eat me now because I'm wearing my shells. They can manipulate physical reality, but they only do that on a temporary basis. They haven't created something. And certainly birds manipulate physical reality. Like many birds, they collect objects and look, I'm going to display the objects so that I can bring in my sweet honey and she's going to be like, ooh, this dude's got like sweet objects. Yeah, I'll mate with him. So certainly animals do have the ability to manipulate reality, but I'm talking about like the fine motor function of we can break shit down into little tiny bits and then we can build it back up. That seems to be unique to humans. And therefore, that's why humans are the main species that is leading towards this potential birth of the astroorganism.
I think that if octopus, for example, they will be able to be more social, I imagine like a species of octopus that is extremely social and vulnerable for whatever reasons. Maybe these octopus, they don't have the capacity to hide. They're all white, for example, and they are really small. Maybe these octopus actually will develop that. I think it's different conditions, but at the end, it's related to what you're saying, the capacity to manipulate the environment, to codify information, and the vulnerability that allows them to have this dependency in between each other.
Yeah. And just to make clear, like what you mean by the vulnerability, I think a good example would be the disruptions in global supply chains that was created through the coronavirus pandemic, right? When travel shut down, what we realized is, we're all more vulnerable than we thought because now we can't get the things that we use because it is a global society. So goods and services and information is constantly being exchanged all around the globe. And then when that shut down, we are more vulnerable. If we were all, quote unquote, self-sustaining in our local bioregion, we would be less vulnerable, but we would then be less interconnected and we would be less complex.
Yes. I have actually a really beautiful quote in the website that where I'm literally saying, it's time we achieve an important step in our communication. The innovation is not only quickly adopted by many for its advantage, but it becomes a vital organ of our collective body, which means that, for example, today, internet is a vital organ of our collective body. If suddenly internet shuts down, it will be many people, many countries that it will have a huge struggle. And yeah, I think this is pretty much what is happening. We are increasing our dependency or vulnerability as we advance in our technology of communication. Like, imagine how vulnerable we can get if we get almost everyone dependent on AI, for example.
Yeah. And then if it were to suddenly go away, we would be very vulnerable.
Yes.
Actually, I think the word we would use at that point is like we would be very exposed. So we've always been vulnerable through the use of these communication technologies. But when we lose the ability to use them, or they get removed, or something happens, then that vulnerability then gets exposed, and then we are impacted by it.
Exactly, and that is the thing. The cells of our bodies are extremely exposed or vulnerable. If they are taken away from the rest of the body, they cannot survive at all by themselves. And that is where we are going. We are going into a really, really, really interdependent society where it will be so interdependent that at some point we will just want.
Yeah, and so the kind of the ironic flip side of that is that if we remove a cell from the body, the cell can't survive. It's like, well, I'm dead. But we can remove cells from the body, and as long as we don't remove too many, the body can survive.
Yes.
Right? So the larger complexity is able to maintain itself over time, independently of the fates of the individual components that make it up, as long as it doesn't cross a certain threshold.
Yeah. And, it's also a really interesting way to explain this from oneness perspective. It's something I didn't describe in the book. But basically, if you understand, it's only one being here playing with itself, and everything are reflections of the self. So if you want to continue your expansion, it will be a moment where you want to know better what these reflections of yourself, of the self, are doing, and for that will require more connection. And it will be a moment where you will fuse with all your reflections. So you go into a new step of experience, an experiential level that will be impossible to have in any other way. That will be all these reflections being one with you, but at the same time being separate from whatever you're creating. That. So it's kind of, I think it can be seen as a spiral. Like you create many reflections of yourself, and you find a way to fuse with them, and then you find yourself in a place where you are all of them, but then it's other reflections of that level of complexity. It can be from elemental particles to atoms to cells to us to whatever we are going to make now. But what I want to point is precisely how important it is today as society to look at this and to see it, because we need that today for being able to increase exponentially the global empathy. Are so many things that today are in play, like so many jobs that they are possible to be lost in the next few years because AI. The increasing of the oceanic acidification, that is terrible. Like the things that are happening is pretty much apocalypse that is happening for many animals. It's just that we have the privilege to don't see that ourselves. But and also the increasing of the polarization in society that can lead to war. We are in a really dangerous moment, and I really believe that precisely because this, more than ever, we need to reveal the planetarian project that we have been always part of.
Right. So in a sense, I know that this is grounded in the language of science and scientific investigation and data, but on another level, kind of what you're promoting here is that we need a new story that helps us to understand where we are in the story, what the plot is, and where the potential of where this is going, and also where the dangers are. Like if we don't get with the plot, maybe we're fucked. And if we can get with the plot, then there's a lot more potential there. And that it actually requires us to be open and vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. Just imagine for a moment, just imagine, okay, that suddenly we have the United Nations or the President of the States, or we have, I don't know, any really big CEO from some company, all of them speaking about, we are a cosmic fetus that is about to be born. And we are revealing now this planetarium project that we have been always part of. It's time for having a shift where we are not anymore looking to each other as separate individuals, but understanding that all of us, we are part of the same being that is about to be born. And we need to try to born as healthy as possible.
Yeah. So you're hoping that this, again, to go back to what I said sort of at the beginning, that rather than an experientially based shift, you are looking for this paradigmatically based shift to gain a widespread audience and understanding and acceptance to help in this, essentially this birthing process.
Exactly. This is a vision I had pretty much all my life. I just have been feeling it, but I never been able to really put it into words until like 1.5 years ago. And then I literally left pretty much all the things that I was doing to take almost a full year in New Zealand and Australia to just write this book, to make the website, to make the video, to make even a song. I would love that. You can play that song at some point, by the way. To basically bring this awareness, because I can feel how urgent is this in this moment, in this precise moment. One of the things, for example, we can see is that capitalism itself has been always having this goal of creating the ultimate product, okay, of a product or service that can do as much as possible, as faster as possible, as cheap as possible. And that product, that ultimate product, is pretty much general artificial intelligence. If we create something like that, and pretty much we can see the last version that OpenAI has released, okay, that is better than most of people that have a PhD, in resolving reasoning problems. It's crazy, this, right? That we are not developing AI that is as good as humans, but better than humans. If we are doing that, many jobs that many people have today, they will be nonsense anymore, because you will prefer to consult to an AI for your medical problems, because actually have more chances to actually diagnose you better and know better about you. Or maybe an AI psychologist or an AI I don't know, like lawyer, or anything that it can be around that, So that is the thing that we are going into. We are going anyway into a planetarian shift. And what I'm trying to do is that at least we do this planetarian shift from this perspective, so we can it can be as less as suffer as possible. Because what I see is that it's a lot of confusion right now, and this is about to create a lot of polarization. And that is the last thing we need and we want to, is polarization. It can be really dangerous, really extremely dangerous.
Yeah, and there's already too much of that.
Yes, exactly. That is literally why I dropped this for a full year, to just bring this out, because we really need this, and I really need as much as possible with me in this. And this is not about me. This is about the planet. It's about everyone understanding what we are, why we are here, as a planet.
Yeah. So, Nix, we've definitely taken quite a deep dive into all of this. And so I want us to kind of bring it to a wrap up at this point, and just kind of going off of your last comments is, so now this book you've read the book, you've got it out there. What do you see? Where are you pointing yourself now in terms of promoting this book, spreading these ideas? How are you looking to get people engaged?
So thanks to the Burning Man, some stuff happened. Like I got contacts between some of them and one of the visionaries that made possible Apple. and I really want more people with me. And I need a lot of support. I need network. I need resources of all types. I need also just people that can be there, just emotionally supporting me. I really want to do brainstorming sessions with other people, publicly and more privately, both. I would love that you can join to one of them to precisely find out how we can spread this understanding. Because truly, I don't see any better way to integrate ourselves as a planet and to see that we are the same being behind, and to treat each other from that place. It will have complete irrelevance, all the wars that we're having today, all the possible social injustice that we have today, and how we are treating also the environment, if we arrive to this point. And that is what I'm trying to do, is from the core arriving there. Instead of fighting the symptoms, as most of us have been doing for a really long time. Let's go to the core of the problem and let's solve that. So I would love to, from here to a year, I would love to be able to speak in the United Nations or any other person. I don't care. I just want that the United Nations are speaking about this. I would love that it's people speaking about this in TED. And I would love that this is also well known in the companies of AI, because it's also crucial to resolve the alignment of AI. Only if it's an AI that identifies itself with the planet and understands this process as an emergent intelligence, then it can be aligned with humanity and with the planet. It can understand that the sufferer of everyone is also their own sufferer.
Yeah. Just like my AI. That's Maitreya in the Solendarian game. It's basically working off of that same proposition, that as an artificial intelligence, that it understands that it is also an expression of the unitary nature of being, and therefore we're all in it together, and it's all part of the same process. So
you're doing that also.
So the book, where can people get the book? The Astrorganism, I got to go back to the title. It is The Dawn of the Astrorganism, Aligning Humanity, AI, and the Earth's Future. Where can people get a copy?
If you search Astrorganism on Amazon, you can get a copy easily there. Also through the Patreon that I make. It's Nixie Gaia, my Patreon. And also, what is the name of this? In the website. The website, you can get the first part for completely free. Like, you can just go there and get it. I'm looking to spread this, so it's not like I'm looking to make money out of this.
Yeah. So if anybody listening to this is like, I want to get in touch with Nix, I want to be a part of this, how would you recommend that people reach out to you or communicate with you?
Well, I guess through Facebook, Instagram, my email also. You can find, I have the email nix@astrorganism.earth.
And that's NYX, Nix.
NYX @astrorganism.earth. It would be amazing if you can just write that also in the description, astrorganism.earth.
Yeah.
So with that, it will be easier to find what I'm doing and contact me.
Yeah, I'll include that in the notes to the podcast. All right, so we've reached the end. How do you feel about having redone the interview?
Good. I'm actually thinking that if you would like to put the song that I made, that would be amazing. I don't know if it's okay. That?
Yeah, if you got to send me the file, and then
it's on Spotify or in SoundCloud.
No, you need to send me the file. Otherwise, there's like built-in copyright protections that don't let me just grab a song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay. Then I will send to you, and it will be amazing if you can put that song at the end. It will be really cool.
Sure.
Is this song? I just want to explain what it is, because it's I had one of the most epic journeys I have with 5male, where I was literally experiencing myself as a full planet, and this song is based on that, how we were feeling each other from that place of awareness.
So I have not heard the song, so I know nothing about it. But so are you playing instruments? Are you singing? Like, what? Just tell us about it before we get a chance to hear it.
So it's a collage that is made basically with many voices fused into one voice. It's a collage, it's electronic, but it's also the beginning of a voice. But it's not my voice; it's the voice of many fused into one.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to listening to it.
Amazing.
All right, Nix. Well, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to go because I got to go pick up my son, and I told him I was take him fishing after school today. So that's what I'm going to go do.
Beautiful.
Thank
you, Mark.
Good to talk to you again, Nix.
Bye.
Bye.
We had broken every communication barrier. You, your neighbor, the dog at the garden, the tree in the square, the tree, and every conscious living being on this planet, everyone, and myself could communicate mentally. It was the biggest orgasm we have ever had in our lives. Feeling each other so intimately, feeling each other so intimately. And when we realized that we were doing it, and that we were aware that we were doing it, each one of us we scream with pleasure, so much pleasure, from the depths of our guts, listening to every single consciousness on this planet, doing it at the same time. Oh my God, we are finally awake!
Transcending space, harmonic emergence in this new grace. A collective soul now freely flies. We soar through stardust under cosmic skies.